Today's episode of Strength Stories is devoted to the papa of modern powerlifting, the great southern ball of a man, Paul Anderson. The images you're about to see were not put through an art AI with a Fallout Pep Boy filter. That's just really how shellacked hair could get way back in the 50s. Paul was born in the extremely northern Georgia town of Toccoa, where a decent long jumper could leap off the courthouse steps and land in South Carolina. While Paul was certainly explosive enough to accomplish that feat, he spent his youth pursuing static strength. He began training to secure a slot on the high school football team. His dad poured him cement weights with wooden frames that Paul would tug and thrust and shove in the backyard. His work earned him a starting spot, then a scholarship to Furman University, where Paul picked up Olympic-style weightlifting. After college, Paul and his parents relocated to southeast Tennessee. In the one McDonald's town of Elizabethton, Anderson would encounter the leggy lifting legend Bob Peoples. It was a meeting befitting the Warhammer 40K setting. Like two estranged Primarchs seeing the Emperor's light in each other, Bob immediately recognized Anderson as a fellow quad god. Bob would introduce Paul to the elite weightlifting community and indoctrinate him in the cult of squats. In 1955, Anderson represented the United States at an international competition hosted by America's adoring comrades in the Soviet Union. The U.S. team's reception was about as warm as the one Rocky got before facing off against Drago. Paul let the hate roll right off his shockingly round and dense physique. This guy was built like a tick freshly pulled off the Hulk. American commentator Bud Palmer admiringly called Anderson a great ball of a man. Nobody could knock him over because he'd just roll. On competition day, the seasoned Soviet Alexei Medvedev harnessed the people's strength to hoist an Olympic record matching 330 pounds in the two-handed press. Paul told those Ruskies to load up 402. The weight was so ludicrously excessive that the audience treated Paul's approach to the bar like a room full of stone martial artists watching Joe Rogan do that screamy punchline thing he ripped off from Sam Kinison. When Anderson locked out the lift, they started sounding as if they'd been guillotined by said hypothetical martial artists. That October, Paul set 2 more records en route to winning the World Championships. Anderson returned to American soil with Vice President Nixon proclaiming him a goodwill ambassador. That goodwill would be tested at the next year's Olympics in Australia. Anderson entered the finals running a 104-degree fever. The Argentinian Umberto Salvetti matched every one of Anderson's attempts, and the 2 athletes finished with equal totals. This meant that the gold medal was going to be determined by body weight. In a backwards way, Paul Anderson's fever actually did him a favor. He weighed in at a waifish 304, 12 pounds under his opponent. Jocko Willink would have said, good. TLDR, dehydration earned Paul the gold. The newly crowned Olympic champion returned stateside for a stint in professional wrestling. His most notable match pitted him against a celebrity circus clown. The compensation he received for his performance rendered him ineligible to defend his Olympic title. That summer in Rome, Soviet heavyweight Yuri Vlasov surpassed Anderson's records en route to claiming gold. Anderson wasn't one to let the commie bastards undermine Southern Christian values, so he channeled the stone-rolling strength of sweet Jesus to take Vlasov's record and manhandle it for a triple. Anderson only mogged gym bros for the glory of God. To that end, Paul founded an eponymous children's home with his good witch wife Glenda. He fundraised with speaking engagements and feats of strength in the tradition of Sandow, Saxon, and the like. Anderson picked lifts for the optics, belt squatting platforms of school children, backlifting 8 men at a time, and hammering nails with his pudgy fist. While Anderson was leaving audiences with mouths as open as their pocketbooks, he was suffering quietly from the escalation of a childhood kidney disease. He died of complications at the age of 61, leaving behind a wife and daughter, a slew of grateful orphans, and many metric tons of handily lifted things. The 1985 edition of the Guinness Book of World Records cites Anderson's 6,200-pound backlift as, quote, the greatest weight ever raised by a human being. Historians view the numbers attached to these exhibition lifts with pragmatic skepticism. The feats weren't sanctioned by any governing body, and certainly didn't involve calibrated plates. The inability to officially verify Anderson's backlift led to its expungement. I know this is hard to imagine for you Instagram lifters, but many of Paul's personal records were set with only the good Lord to watch him. He laid claim to a 1,206-pound squat, a 628 bench, and an 820 deadlift. That 1206 squat is heavy enough to make Dave Hoff. That 1206 squat is heavy enough to make Dave Hoff change his opener. Even if you're giving it the skeptical hippo eyes, Anderson squatted 930 pounds in legitimate professional competition. He also pulled 1,000 pounds with Captain Hook-style implements that passed for straps in the 60s. He push-pressed 560, strict-pressed 435, and performed a one-arm side press similar to the Saxon lift with 380 pounds. Kazmaier, Cohen, Reinaudt, and even Anderson's remote rival Yuri Vlasov adamantly praised that great ball from Georgia. Two-time world's strongest man Bruce Wilhelm claimed that Big Paul was a powerlifter before his time. In fact, Anderson was being called the world's strongest man before CBS ever trademarked the title. You wonder how many athletes slip through the cracks like this, never stumbling upon the proper medium with which to express their gifts. With the increasing accessibility of strongman-style equipment and competitions, that outcome is looking less likely for those young and rotund balls put together like Paul. It's easier than ever to envision a path from your backyard weight set to the inheritance of Anderson's moniker. Thanks for watching. Let me know how high you think that 1206 squat was in the comments. Until next time, cut fruit with two blades, like Musashi.